Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science Podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com, and this week I am so happy to introduce a very special guest on our show today. We have with us Dr. Paul Wotton, who is CEO of RBL, a venture studio partially owned by Rice University. The mission of the venture is to select, develop, and spin out intellectual property from the Rice Biotech LaunchPad, aiming to drive innovative biotech ventures. Dr. Wotton is an experienced CEO, board member, inventor, and entrepreneur with expertise in strategic growth, business transactions, and product development. He serves on the boards of several biotech companies, and he also co-founded Avenge Bio and previously served as president and CEO of Ocata until its acquisition by Astellas in 2016. Dr. Wotton has been recognized as a top 100 innovation CEO by World Biz Magazine and won Ernst & Young's New Jersey Life Sciences Entrepreneur of the Year Award in 2014. So to learn more about the work that Dr. Wotton is leading at RBL, let's turn to him now. Thank you so much, Dr. Wotton, for being on the show with us today.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you, Ayesha, and I appreciate the invitation to join you guys.
Thank you so much once again. I'm looking forward to the conversation in a very highly evolving, innovative field and a very important field in terms of investment capital and ventures and really, it's the engine driving all of biotech innovation essentially. So I'd like to learn more about your career journey actually and what led you up to founding RBL.
Sure. So I started out life as a scientist, and my first jobs were in big pharma, Merck, and then Abbott subsequently. And I got moved to the United States by a smaller NASDAQ-listed company called Penn West in the 90s, and came over because I was a scientist who had a business background, and they were looking to set up a new business around a technology platform that they had developed. It's a very early stage, and I started work on that, and the result of that was we were able to spin out a company called Penn West Pharmaceuticals in 1998 onto NASDAQ. So I really enjoyed that process of taking a platform and turning it into a product, and I went through a couple of other drug delivery companies, Urand and Sky Pharma, both in business development roles, and did a lot of transactional work at those points in time, but also got involved with development committees between the company I was representing and larger companies. And from there, I went on to become a CEO in actually Canada, in Montreal, for 4.5 years, where I was my first biotech experience. It was oligonucleotide work, which today is big business, as you know, with companies like Alnylam. And was there for a good period of time until I moved to take over a company called Antares, which is based down here in New Jersey. So that company in 2008, when I took it over, was about a $23 million market cap company, had two platforms, injectable technology and gel technology, focused the company on injection technology and self-injection at home was the market we went after. And that company was acquired by Halozyme a few years ago for about $1 billion. So that one worked out. And the company launched its own products rather than being a drug delivery service provider. And we had two products on the market. Xiasted was the more recent one, which was a testosterone replacement injection that is actually quite successful in the market. It's probably the best testosterone products in the market today. And from there, I took over Ocata. 6 years later, I was headhunted to go and do Ocata, which was my first experience with cell and gene therapy. And Ocata was fantastic technology. It's one of the pioneers in stem cell technology in the world, and was in a phase 2 clinical trial with a treatment for Stargardt's macular degeneration or age-related macular degeneration, and had just got round to fixing that and focusing it. We raised some money, and then Astellas bought that as their beachhead for their cell and gene therapy expansion in the United States. And I was really pleased about that because that type of technology did need a home with very deep pockets, particularly at that time. And since then, I met Bob Langer as part of the experience with Ocata and set up a couple of companies with Bob. And through him, I met Omid Vesa, who's a professor down at Rice in Houston. And my last company I ran up in Boston was Obsidian Therapeutics, and that was an engineered T cell company, specifically tumor infiltrating lymphocytes. And the story of how I got to Houston is all linked to knowing Omid, meeting Bob Langer, and then doing this work with Obsidian, where we were able to take a product from literally bench side to clinic in 3 years. And the first patient who was treated for stage 4 melanoma was a complete responder to the therapy. And I have to say that that all occurred during COVID. A large part of the development work occurred during COVID. It happened down in Houston because we weren't able to do the work in Cambridge. But to see that level of productivity was very unusual for me. And I think it's one of the reasons what attracted me to Houston to do the job I'm doing now, which is to create companies down there. Not just from Rice, but from other institutions in Texas, and get them into a point where they can start thinking about raising serious money.
Wow, yeah, indeed, the journey and really having that science background and driving into, like you said, getting a product from lab to the clinic. What a journey that in itself is, and I think so many elements involved in that you've helmed and had the background in that whole trajectory and that whole journey. So that's fantastic to learn about. And in terms of RBL, what is the firm's investment focus, and what, we talk about there are different companies in the space, but what do you think differentiates it from other venture firms in the life sciences, would you say?
Well, we're really a venture creation studio. We're not a venture capitalist in the true sense. So our job is to identify platforms that look promising and then to try and establish whether or not we can create a company around those platforms. But it has to be built on a product opportunity that is going to be, before we bring them into the LLC, they have to be vetted and validated by physicians, because what we want to develop are products that are relatively competition free, but which meet a big unmet need. And importantly, develop products that physicians themselves really want to use. So that's where we focus. So one of the benefits of being down in Houston is that from my office, I'm actually in the same building as some Baylor College colleagues, and I have MD Anderson just across the street. So it's very easy to communicate or find physicians down in Houston who you can have a meeting the next day if you just phone them up. They're very collegiate down there. And so we bring in programs that have backing from physicians who would use the product. And if physicians say it's going to be difficult or doesn't fit with practice needs and things like that, then we really just park those projects to one side to focus on the ones where we know there's going to be a market opportunity. And more importantly, market opportunities derive from providing significant patient benefits.
It's fantastic. And in terms of identifying those companies, to me, it sounds like you're really looking for innovation. So when you mentioned that you're looking at products and companies that don't have competition in the field, so is that kind of where you're really looking at to innovate and to really bring treatments that don't have competitors and that are physician-led, as you mentioned as well?
Yes, I can give you a good example. So we're working on a program right now. We haven't announced the company, but the company will be announced shortly. And it's one that is focused on developing a treatment for lymphedema, which is a big unmet need. And it's really to help create, if you will, an artificial lymph node, but is to provide the lymph drainage channels with better connectivity after people have been through surgery. And for those people who don't know or haven't heard about this, about half of the patients who've had breast cancer surgery and lose lymph nodes actually end up with lymphedema. And there literally is no treatment for that. And that idea came out from a discussion between breast cancer surgeons in MD Anderson and bioengineers at Rice. So it was a jointly conceived idea. And that program, which is an implant that contains cells that secrete high levels of growth cytokines and things like that, means that you can actually draw these lymph channels together to meet in the middle, if you will, in an implant, and do that much more rapidly than alternatives available today. So we think that's a big unmet need. We think we've got a really elegant approach to it. The surgeons are excited by it. And right now it's in large animal models, which is where we wanted to go by the end of the year. It's got some significant funding from government agencies because they see there's an unmet need as well. And we will be looking to build that company over the next 12 to 18 months to finance it with a Series A financing, although it has a lot of grant money available to it today. But that's a typical example where we would actually take a technology platform, work on it with physicians, and then in actual fact, using the grant money as an alternative in some cases to a Series A funding, because we can take it a long way. And the nice thing about some of these grants like ARPA-H, for example, is that the team at ARPA have already vetted the technology and confirmed that there is a market opportunity for it as well. So that's really what we're all about, is making sure we develop something that people really want to use in the future.
That's, yeah, absolutely wonderful. And really to get those insights into how to come to companies and to working on platforms and bringing them really from lab to clinic and that whole journey. Very, very interesting. And in terms of, I love that example that you gave of lymphedema as well, in terms of, it sounds to me that you're combining really innovative platforms and taking a look at indications that may have high unmet needs. And so are there any particular areas of focus, would you say, or are you, do you have a broad scale approach in terms of the disease areas and indications that you tend to work in?
Yeah, so personally, I have a real desire to make a difference, particularly in cancer treatments. And it's one of the reasons that I went to Obsidian, for example, to do that. And it's driven by personal experience, not I've had, but family members have had. And when you actually pick up that, you realize there's a lot that can still be done for these patients. So cancer therapeutics is one area where I feel very strongly about using newer technologies to make a difference, and putting my business skills to use with scientists to help them design companies and design a plan and make sure they sort of do all the blocking and tackling on things like manufacturing and development. And then the other area, which I think is really exciting going forward, is in things like autoimmune disorders. So a lot of what we do in oncology involves the immune system, and in cancer, for example, a lot of the programs we work on use pro-inflammatory mediators to drive a response to a tumor, whereas in autoimmune disorders, you're actually trying to dumb the immune system down. So it's the opposite end of the spectrum, but the type of technology we're working on will bridge that spectrum one way or the other. So those two areas where the immune system involvement is so critical are the areas I think where there's a lot of excitement right now.
And this may seem to be an elementary question of sorts, but how do you identify a good opportunity? What makes an opportunity good and worth pursuing? What are the elements that go into that decision making?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, the first thing is we want to make sure that we're going to bring benefit to a significant number of patients. And for investors, what they're looking for is an opportunity that will change therapy, but at the same time be quite unique in the way it's going to be used and have a competitive edge over other things in the marketplace, for example. I mean, investors always want to make a profit on the money they invest, of course. And my job is to make sure that we develop programs where they can actually do that. And that investment drives innovation, and we just keep recycling that through the system. But it's really making sure that there's a program we can identify where we're going to change the way a disease is treated, where we can make a meaningful difference to patients. And we wouldn't, for example, touch something. There's so many CAR T programs out there right now. I can't see us doing one of those because there's literally 1,000 of them in the world today. And many of them are going after similar targets. And it's really hard to be able to execute a clinical development program for something like that, let alone be able to sell the product.
And what technology platforms are you most excited about in today's landscape, and emerging technologies or technologies that may have been around but are really coming to light now? So whether that's mRNA-based therapeutics, which got a huge push, of course, during COVID via the COVID-19 vaccines, the mRNA-based vaccines, or other technologies and platforms that you feel hold a lot of promise.
Well, we're working on a platform right now, which I think is going to be a real game changer. So this is where we're combining biotechnology with advances in electronics effectively. And so we're developing this new class of therapeutics called hybrid bioelectronics, for want of a better description. Bob Lang is involved with us on this program. So it's a combination of a number of researchers from MIT, Rice, Northwestern, as well as colleagues down at MD Anderson. But what we're doing here is we're taking a little cell factory. So this is a device that's filled with human cells that will secrete a human protein, and that can be implanted into the body. And then the same device is going to be able to do a few things. One is oxygenate the cells and control the output from that device. We can put cells in that will manufacture more than one protein or cytokine to treat the disease, so you can do a combination product. And then the other side of that is you can fine tune the device, so you can actually have sensors within the same device that can detect whether or not the patient is responding to the treatment you're actually giving them, and then create a feedback system so that you can regulate the amount of substances that are administered to the patient, and can also report back. So we have Bluetooth capabilities in those, so they can report back to the outside world. And what we're also working on is an implant where the battery, if you will, is actually going to be a rechargeable one that you can actually recharge externally. So that's the type of technology where we're going now, where we're combining biotechnology with advances in communication and electronics.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's super interesting. Yeah, really bridging, I guess, biotech, medical devices, and pharma all kind of together, bridging all of those areas. It's super exciting.
Yeah. And what we're actually doing is implanting, if you think about it, little cell factories in the patient that you can keep the cells alive and they can produce these proteins for a long time. The FDA is familiar with that type of technology because we've taken more than one program through the FDA now. But at the end of the day, there's no reason, if you think about it in the longer term, to have these huge factories manufacturing vast quantities of antibodies, and then you have to do all the separation, you have to purify them, then you got to ship it. All that adds to cost. And what we could do is deliver a pure human protein on site in the patient and control it. And I think um, that's a really ambitious goal, but actually I believe it's achievable as a goal. And we could make patients independent of some types of therapies where they can enjoy a more normal life, where they're just carrying around a small implant instead of having to self-inject every day. Things like that will make a difference.
And I would think this would be something that would be applicable in diseases like diabetes, type 1 diabetes, where you have continuous production of insulin. I do remember coming across technologies where there are implantable cell pouches, and things of that nature. So this definitely sounds along those lines.
That's exactly right. You have a feedback system built in. In the case of type 1 diabetes, the feedback system is actually within the islet cell already. What we can do here is engineer it into a device that contains living cells that manufacture, and they can manufacture insulin if they want to, or we program them to. But right now we're programming cells to make things like monoclonal antibodies, checkpoint inhibitors, things like that. We've actually got a hit list of over 300 proteins which we're working through to be able to do this. And we're creating a library of these down in Houston in our facility.
Wow, that definitely sounds like it could be game changing, and I definitely see kind of again like where the innovation really drives what you're doing at RBL, and in terms of really investing in those potentially game changing platform technologies.
Yeah, because this is going to go a long way, because the power of the biotechnology and electronic components is, when you bring them together, is very high right now. But imagine in another world where you can now use AI technology to
I was just
identify
going to ask.
the optimum combinations of 2, 3, 4, 5 proteins that can be delivered simultaneously, various ratios of them over a period of time, fixed period of time that might be short or long. There's so much that can be done with this now. We're just scratching at the surface of what these newer technologies like AI and microelectronics can bring to us. And we're developing what I would talk about probably as multifunctional implants for the future. That's the long-term vision.
That's awesome. And yeah, I was just going to ask about AI, and in terms of, do you just see this as a passing trend, or do you see real potential in it driving things forward in drug development? And of course, it has a lot of potential uses in terms of algorithms and the immense amounts of data that are being generated in drug development, and to find targets and hits and all of that. So how does AI fit into the equation, and do you think it's hype, or do you really feel if applied properly it can be a game changer?
Well, I think it's more than hype, it's real. And it's here now. It's already starting to make an impact in our business.
So it's not so artificial then.
No, it's real intelligence. Yeah. It just happens to be non-human intelligence, really. But the use of that intelligence to do things like predict when someone's going to have, for example, an epileptic attack, for example, and then you can actually deliver on site in real time the antidote to that's just one example, and that may not be the best one, but using it to be able to create brilliant pattern recognition and predictive sort of treatments from that, I think is immensely powerful, and it's happening now, and it's going to continue to grow and be a big part of what we do as an industry.
And as an industry, what are some of the biggest challenges, do you think, today? I know biotech has, been kind of a whirlwind in the last decade or so. You hear about so many ups and downs, a lot of the challenges. But where do you see the space today, and where do you see it headed in terms of the challenges and how to overcome them? And what's your take on that?
Well, we had a really good period in the 2015 to 2020 cycle of our industry, where the IPO market was hot and investments were going into startup biotechnology companies. And we created a lot of new companies in that time. And then we had COVID. And now we're in a different cycle where it's hard to get financing for companies. A lot of the companies that were formed during that period have struggled to survive. And so there's a comeback period we're now going to have to enter to drive biotech back to where it was a decade ago in terms of funding. But in actual fact, I think what that has been able to do is to make sure that any investments now in companies that are in biotech platforms or new products are going to be probably a lot more disciplined about how they spend the money, and probably bring a better focus to their efforts in order to get products to the market that will really matter.
And in terms of sort of the landscape of biotech today, we see a lot of, innovation accelerators and all of, and the ecosystem really is so diverse, I would say, today in terms of academia and industry partnerships. And that speaks to, of course, Rice University and the relationship that RBL has there as well. And then at Stanford, of course, that, their innovation hubs and really fostering a culture of entrepreneurship right in academia. And so how do you see, how is that landscape today, and how has that evolved? And do you think that is an important element really to foster innovation right at the in the academia space, and to really give rise to innovations and innovators that can helm and be the bridge between academia and industry?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that if I look back over the last 10, 15 years, I think most successes that have come through from biotechnology and done wonderfully well to treat patients have come out of academic institutions, and a very high percentage of those were funded with government money, whether it's NIH money or ARPA money now. So what we're able to do down in Houston, as an example, we've got an ecosystem there where if money comes into Rice for a bioengineering program, we have a home to go to just across the street where we can start thinking about how we can think forward in terms of clinical trials and stuff like that. So having that wholly integrated set of capabilities down in Houston, for example, is really powerful for us because we can get great advice right from the start on programs. We can involve physicians and other medical scientists in the way we approach problems down there. So it takes a village to really be successful with developing one of these products. And in Houston, we've got everything down there. We've got a Nobel Prize winner in Jim Allison, who's now sitting in a building across the street from where I am. And but just having access to that network of people that can help you, and more importantly, can help you quickly. So I think that's one benefit we have down there in the terms of the ecosystem we have, and also a very committed community to making sure that Texas is seen to be a success now in biotech. They've had great success in energy, and they're going to have a lot of success, I predict, in AI as well. And our job is to bring biotech into that sphere.
And Dr. Wotton, what does it take to be a good leader, to really, what kinds of skills, as we talk about leadership skills, but what are some of the important elements that go into good leadership?
Well, I think that, and I'm not saying this because I believe it myself necessarily, but other people have told me that what I'm good at is actually building teams that are functional and bringing a team together that are all wanting to achieve the same goal. And that really means just picking the right people to be on your side. And so that's really what I think is important. I just want to work with people that I like, that work hard and are going to be honest. And as a leader, I'm quite okay with taking honest criticism from somebody that has the right motivation to make those comments. And I encourage it in all of my teams that I work with. I think it's really important to be honest about where you want to go and what you want to do, and recognize that other people should also be heard. And the worst kind of leadership, I think, is where you have a person who thinks they know everything, who tells everybody else how to do stuff. And they will just continue to create a toxic work environment and actually run a company into the ground over years. And you don't see it coming until it's actually too late. So I really believe it's important to just pick a great team, trust your people that they know what they're doing, and let them get on with it.
And I know we touched on this, but really, what market or scientific trends do you think will shape biotech investing over the next 5 to 10 years? We talked about technologies like cell and gene therapies, RNA. What really do you think is going to continue leading innovations in the field?
I think we're going to see, with all the new technology we have available, particularly AI and the like, I do believe we're going to enter a new era where multifunctional products, where you have combinations of mediators in a single medicine, if you will, they're going to be designed and they're going to come to market quite quickly. And I think this intelligent approach to combining therapeutics is really where we're going to be heading. In the case of oncology, for example, single agents don't usually work. They always combine chemotherapy or chemo plus radiotherapy. So in those more complex diseases, you have to have more than one thing going on at one time. And I think that's really where we're heading now, is being able to combine multiple therapeutics in one program to be able to treat patients more successfully. And then there's also the feedback loops we talked about earlier. Being able to modulate those and control them, I think, is also going to be really important as we go forward.
And what's next for RBL in terms of milestones coming up in the next year and beyond?
We've got a lot of ambitions, actually. We've rolled out 3 companies this year. We want to roll out more in the next 12 to 18 months. We've got a mission to attract really good management talent down to Houston, as well as more venture capital down to Houston. So I think that continuing to bring those people into our ecosystem is going to be one of our main goals. And we all know that the science is down there in Houston. The money is down there in Houston. What we're trying to work on now is creating companies down in Houston where we have great CEOs as part of those companies from day one. And that's really what I'm focused on right now, is just making sure we can bring like-minded people down there to help us succeed.
Dr. Wotton, thank you so much for your time and such incredible, wonderful insights into the world of it's not venture capitalism, but really driving the innovations in biotech and drug discovery and to really ultimately help patients. So thank you so much for everything that you do and for sharing all of those valuable insights. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Ayesha. I've enjoyed the discussion and hopefully meet you sometime in the future.
Sounds great. That would be so lovely, wonderful. You did mention that you started off in Canada, in Montreal, and we're actually in Toronto. So if you're ever up in Canada.
Oh. Yeah, I was actually in Montreal this week. So that's one of the
wow.
reasons why we're doing the talk today.
There you go.
But I'm working with a really cool company up there developing an artificial liver for liver failure. Yeah, it's called Morphicell. You should check them out.
I definitely will. That's amazing. So awesome. That's another area of really organogenesis, I think it's called. Really artificial organs and so much promise indeed.
Yeah, and the science up in Canada is like the science down in Houston. It's world class. And so building companies around those platforms, it's really exciting. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I know where I am in Ontario, there's really a push to create Ontario as a biomanufacturing hub, as a life sciences hub. And so that's really been taking off in the last several years as well. And you have big companies like the AstraZenecas and the Roches, really Sanofi's investing heavily in the province and in Canada as a country. We were, very quiet in the landscape, but it seems like, with things changing globally, I think we're going to see a lot of different players in the market, and so very exciting time.
Yes, it is. Yeah, well, enjoy Toronto.
Thank you, and thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, yeah.
And just going to wrap up. Thank you to everyone for watching the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.